moment to pause and share the day with ourselves in silence? Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you all being here. The meeting will now come to order. The first thing we'll do is introductions of the Budget Committee members. I am Tim Brown, Chairman of Ways and Means, Chairman of the Budget Committee.
Ben Tooley, Director of Fiscal Policy for the House Republicans.
Liz Brown, State Senate District 15.
Krista Rivera Ricci, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Republican Caucus.
Bob Cherry, Assistant Alternate on the House Republican from Greenfield.
Liza Bartlett, Fiscal Analyst for the House Republicans.
Seth Hinshaw, Fiscal Analyst, Senate Republican Caucus.
Lisa Ackelbert, Deputy Budget Director.
Randhir Jha, Chief Economist for Legislative Services Agency.
Go ahead.
Carrie Hamilton, State Representative, House District 87, Alternate Budget.
Greg Taylor, Senate District 33.
Susan Preble, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Democrat Caucus.
Karen Tialian, Senate District 4.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat, Fiscal Analyst.
Gregory Porter, House District 96.
Joe Hagan, Deputy Budget Director.
Zach Jackson, I'm the Governor's Budget Director.
Thank you. The meeting will officially come to order. There have minutes of the last meeting have been distributed to the members of the committee. Are there any amendments to the minutes? Can we have a motion to so approve? Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. There's a proposed agenda that's been distributed to all members and released to the public. Are there any amendments to the proposed agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is laid on the table for discussion, and we'll start going through the projects on the agenda. Appreciate your support. So first of all, we have agency projects, the Department of Natural Resources. Mr. Smith, the floor is yours. And there is hand sanitizer, I believe, up by the podium if you all want that or not want that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to introduce the new DNR director. We tried to make it around the room earlier, but I've got Dan Bortner here with me. He was the former State Parks Director. DNR is in good hands. Dan Bortner. DNR has two items on today's agenda, the first being Tippecanoe River State Wastewater Treatment Plant Replacement. That's a lot to say there. This wastewater treatment plant was constructed in 1960 and has exceeded its useful life. Presently, only 2 of the original 4 aeration and clarification tanks are operational, thus the plant is operating at 50% capacity. This plant will be replaced with a constructed wetland facility utilizing the existing access, plumbing, facilities, and utilities to reduce costs. Tippecanoe River State Park is located in Pulaski County near Winnemac and generates approximately $1.5 million in revenue annually.
Any questions? Next project, go ahead.
Item number 2, Brown County State Park Sewer System Repair. This is the final phase of the Brown County Sewer System Repair and Project Replacement. A sanitary survey showed that there were a collapsed lift station and leaking lines. The current system includes original lines from 1930. This project will replace and repair sewer lines and construct a new lift station to improve the collection system within the park and saves $40,000 in operating costs annually. Brown County is the state's largest state park with over 16,000 acres and has over 1.2 million visitors a year and generates $2.5 million in revenue annually.
Thank you. Any questions on item number 2? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Mr. Babb, Family and Social Service Administration.
Thank you. I have 2 projects for Logansport State Hospital. Both are for their dietary building, Building 103. The first is to replace 25,000 square feet of roofing that was installed in 1990. Roof is deteriorated. When we installed this, Public Works gave us a 10-year lifespan for the rubber roof. It's going on 30 years and it's bad condition. It needs replaced.
Thank you. How long will this roof?
We're hoping 30.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Next project?
The second one is, once again, for the dietary building. This is to continue with the upgrades to the HVAC system. Once again, the building was built in 1980. This is original equipment. It's all analog or pneumatic. We're trying to upgrade the condensers to put air back into the kitchen and for the dining room.
Question on HVA system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next will be the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, Mr. Orm and Mr. Horty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You folks get to see me pretty regularly. I'd like to introduce Executive Director Horty of the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. Over the last couple of years, Tim is not only my client, but he's become my friend. So he's a longtime cop from the local area, and he's just been a pleasure to deal with. The Indiana Law Enforcement Academy is a state-certified law enforcement training venue located in Hendricks County. As part of that, they run about 2,000 law enforcement officers a year through rifle and pistol qualifications on that facility. They have a rifle pistol qualification range, a pretty state-of-the-art range on that facility. It's 21 years old. I've never renovated a rifle and pistol range before, but at the end of the day, it is brick and mortar. I know how to handle brick, mortar, and concrete. This renovation is just a phased 21-year renovation of those facilities, correcting some original construction mistakes and a lot of weathering that will preserve that structure as an operable venue for several more decades.
Senator Talion.
Thank you. I've seen pole barns older than 21 years old. Why is this concrete and masonry failing after 20 years? I mean,
Ma'am, I would have to take you on site to show you. So when you on the basics of when you join concrete and steel together, they contract and expand at 2 different rates. When this was built for the World Police and Fire Games, the engineers didn't put any expansion joints in it. So over the 21 years, the steel I-beams, the noise baffles, and the partitions and everything are mounted onto the steel and concrete, have expanded and contracted, creating linear cracks, and now it's resulted in some structural damage. Part of this project will go back and correct those. I wasn't there when they put them in, but I certainly know how to correct them going forward.
Yeah, it just seems to me that, I mean, we build things with steel and concrete all the time. Was this a bad build to start with? This 20 years on a steel and concrete building just sounds ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I wasn't there, so this is not really a building. There's not really a roof. There's not really walls. It's a freestanding, out in the weather type of structure. Why did they not put them in? I can't answer. It's part of the basic design criteria when you mate those two materials together, is to put an expansion joint into it, and they did not. And it's the mechanical weathering is just tearing up the structure. It's either So we looked at the job, we looked at when is the smart time in the service life of this. It's in, the facility is in immaculate condition. They've done a wonderful job maintaining it. But if we don't correct these structural issues now, they'll have to start from scratch in another 10 years if the weathering continues.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Taylor?
Okay, now I'm on. The gentleman that's over the training academy, couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Are you just over the rifle and shooting range part
No,
of the
sir, I'm the
academy?
executive director, so I'm in charge of the whole campus.
Okay, so you're in charge, great. So, as far as police officers per year, how many come through the academy?
There are 500 basic police officers come through a year, the brand-new young men and women from Evansville to Gary, and then we put about 2,000 in-service officers through the training facility in a year's period of time. Not
Okay.
all through firearms, but through various phases of the trainings.
All right, so you actually do the training so you're familiar with the training for law enforcement?
Yes.
So are all law enforcement who are working in local law enforcement agencies, do they come to your academy?
The good majority of them do. The folks from Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and Evansville, and Hobart typically don't. But about 65% of the police officers from around the state come to our facility to train as basic officers.
And how many hours of training do they get a year?
They go through 600 hours of training in a session, in a 15-week session. It's a residential academy, so they come and stay in a dormitory Monday through Friday, go home on the weekends. We feed them and have the classroom sessions every day.
And what is the continuing education training for law enforcement officers in your
That could be anything from firearms to first aid to medical training.
Is it required?
Autism. Officers are required to perform 24 hours of in-service training in a year. 6 of those hours have to be from firearms, emergency vehicle operations, and defensive physical tactics.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further question? Thank you very much. Next, we have Department of Local Government Finance, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Shackles.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Wes Bennett, Commissioner of the Department of Local Government Finance. I have with me my General Counsel and Chief of Staff, Dan Shackle, who is also the project lead for the agency on the online personal property project that we're talking about today. We started this development about 3.5 years ago for the governor's initiatives on modernization and efficiencies at local government. The agenda summary, I think, outlines everything pretty concisely, and this is our second request for the final tranche of money to complete the project. The project is on time and on budget, and we are excited to say that the 300,000, or actually 400,000 filers across the state, as well as the 92 counties that are involved, will enjoy modernization and efficiencies in this. At this time, there's mounds of paper stacked up in county assessors' offices trying to handle online personal property reporting from the filers in their counties. Hamilton County has about 46,000 filers. Ohio County has about 480 filers. So there's a wide variety of filers, and the number across the state varies widely as well. Our plan is to roll this out January of 21. As I said, we're on time and on budget, and we would appreciate your consideration, and thank you for your time today, and be glad to take any questions.
So starting January of 2021, a citizen will be able to look up a parcel, or?
Mr. Chairman, what this will do is a business owner will be able to file their personal property returns online through a single system.
Okay.
Right now, it's all done on paper.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next is the Adjutant General. Mr. Winslow and Mr. Collins.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm Brigadier General Tim Winslow. I'm the Director of the Joint Staff for the Indiana National Guard. General Lyles is on convalescent leave, so he sends his regards to the committee today for not being here. So our project is asking for the state share for adding to the federal funding to improve our armory at Shelbyville, to connect the water and sewer to that facility in anticipation of the requirements to secure that federal funding to improve the armory. So as you can see in some of the notes, it was originally built in 1972 for a smaller company-sized infantry unit, and now the facility, as the Indiana National Guard has grown, so has our mission. It now is hosting about 3 times as many individuals as well as modernized Black Hawk helicopters. It was originally on well water and local solid waste systems. So we're looking to connect to the public utilities so we can secure the $12 million upgrade to the actual armory itself. And that $12 million will be federal funds to improve that facility. So fire suppression from the well water is not achievable with the water pressures. So that's another reason why, as we secure that $12 million upgrade, that it's important for us to make these connections in advance of the project. Additionally, in the out years, we are looking at future expansion and corrections to the aviation flight facility on site there at Shelbyville, which for the fire suppression and the water connection, that will help us protect the 9 Blackhawks at a cost of about $147 million there at that facility so that we can have the appropriate fire suppression. So pending your questions, that's what we have for our project this morning.
Thank you. Are you fairly comfortable the federal funds are there?
Yes, sir. Yes, for an FY21 project, fiscal year 21 for us, yes.
Okay. Further questions? Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see that you're going to be mitigating the actual well. So
Yes, sir.
who's going to pay the bill for the water system that you're going to use there going forward?
That's part of our master plan and our facilities costs going forward.
Who pays? Is the state?
The
The
Indiana National Guard and the state does have some share in the utility costs.
Okay.
But, the federal does pay utility costs. So for the National Guard, it depends on the type of the facility itself and how much and of what utilities are paid by the federal and the state.
So there is going to be effectively, there's going to be a cost to the state taxpayers for this upgrade going
Yes.
forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The Department of Corrections, Mr. Orm.
Thank you again, sir. The correctional industrial facility was built in 1987. It was one of the first of Indiana's modern correctional facilities to be constructed. To this day, it serves in its original role. It does that very well. Unfortunately, when you build an entire prison at one time, the roof seems to degrade at the same rate, and you have to re-roof your entire prison. The facility, the roof is 33 years old. This project is $1.6 million, is for replacement of the first roughly 35% of the roof on some of the high security structures and the housing units. This is the first of 2 phases. The second phase of this project will be in the next biennial budget. This is a traditional roof of 117,000 square feet. It's lasted for, it was like Mr. Babb talked, it was a 10-year roof. We've gotten 33 years out of it. Nothing here, a particular note, except this is the facility. You hear me talk a lot about roofing projects and how we have used those to do vocational training for offenders and roof maintenance and find a lot of jobs for inmates. This is the facility where we actually tested and validated that process. It has just reached the point where it's no longer viable for renovation or restoration. It's time to replace it.
Questions? Representative Porter.
Good to see you again. Question is, you indicated that you utilize some of the inmates to do some of the work.
We do, sir.
So is this entire roof going to be completed by said residents?
No, sir. The replacement itself will not involve the residents at all. The ability the steps that we've taken to improve to lengthen the lifespan of the roof has been done by offenders. Recoating, cleaning the roofs, gently pressure washing the roofs annually, things like that we've used offender labor for. This particular project, there will be, other than possibly some trash removal or something like that, there's no major component of this project that we'll be using resident labor for at all.
And this project was bidded out publicly?
Yes, sir, it will be.
It will be?
It will be, yes, sir.
Okay, and that will be done through the Department of Administration?
Yes, sir.
And you would look at the most responsive, reasonable bid?
I always do. I always do.
Of 3 or 4 companies?
Hopefully I get 10 or 12. In a reflection of the local, of the current climate, we recently opened bids with 7 respondents. That's unheard of. I think a lot of folks are looking at state government they know that the state being stable, they're looking at those to bid on those jobs right now more enthusiastically than they have in the past.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, will it be possible for when those bids like that come in that there'll be a report done so it have more transparency in regards to those companies and the bid process and minority participation in those processes? Just an update from when we continue to have these million-dollar projects.
I think what I'd ask is maybe Mr. Orm just have the final bidder report to the budget director and he share with all of us.
I will. I believe the Department of Administration, who actually manages these bids, I believe they publish that report regularly, sir. I look at it occasionally, but not regularly. I believe they have a group that does that now. I'll follow up and I'll get that to you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if you will, I yield to Senator Taylor because I think he sits on that commission. He may be able to enlighten us on this more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Taylor, you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions. The Department of Corrections, where's this facility located?
Madison County. It's we have 3 facilities co-located on the complex. The Pendleton Juvenile Facility and the Pendleton Correctional Facility, formerly the Indiana Reformatory, all in Madison County.
Okay, so this is juvenile and adult facility.
This facility, sir, the focus of this project is solely a adult male facility.
Adult, okay. How does the Department of Corrections determine what facilities are going to need renovations and/or upgrade?
We spend an incredible amount of time doing master planning. We have every one of our facilities, and whether it be the Chain of Lakes Correctional Facility in northeastern Indiana or a mega prison like Miami Correctional Facility, has a formal master plan. The master plan is everything from the condition of the bricks and masonry to the condition of the HVAC to the condition of the roofs in this case. Those are reviewed annually by my staff. We review those with the facility site managers. We look at changes. Sometimes we're able to push a project back. Sometimes we have to bring a project to the committee or to the budget agency before it's projected. But all of those have every life cycle of every mechanical feature of a prison identified and tracked.
Does it also include the lack thereof? So you brought up HVAC, for example.
Sir?
Do all of our correctional facilities have HVAC?
They do not.
So if there's a facility that doesn't have HVAC, we've gone through a very hot summer. how do you determine whether or not you're going to put HVAC in those facilities?
That is an operational decision dictated by the facility operations. I will add, obviously, I've been asked that question 1,000 times in my career. Some facilities, due to their design and construction in Indiana, it's not physically possible to install HVAC in them. For instance, the Indiana State Prison with a cell house 5 tiers tall, if I was to get air conditioning in the top row, I would literally make it rain in the first level. It's just not physically possible. But it's an operational decision. In some areas, it's not as easy as installing a rooftop unit. You have to first bring, in some cases that I've looked at, you'd have to bring sufficient electrical power in from the local electric grid to be able to power it. Sometimes, someplace, they don't even have that much. So it's operational requests. When we receive an operational request to add HVAC, add air conditioning, we look at those requests. We put a project budget together. We've done it in some unit, so particularly where we keep our offenders that are under the treatment of psychotropic medications, they are specifically required to be within a controlled environmental zone, and we added to that. But every one of those is a standalone project, sir, and I'm sorry, there's no easy can we or can't we. It's every one of them is a case by case, and I wish I had a nickel for every time I'd said that in my career.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your candidness on that. The reason why I asked that question is because we have several facilities, actually. I remember it might have been a year or two ago, we actually, as a budget committee, visited a facility down in the base, the old military base down south of Blue.
Edinburgh Correctional Facility.
It was pretty daggone hot in there.
It was a warm day, sir.
Yeah, and it was very few, if any, window units. You know, I don't know what they cost, but I'm pretty sure you could buy them in bulk. But the inmates were outside because it was cooler outside than it was to be inside. And then, as you know, recently we had some issues with the women's correctional facility over on the west side of Marion County. So can you do, I'd like, and Mr. Chairman, you might be able to elaborate on this. I think with the situation that we have going in this pandemic right now, it'd be a good time for us to do an evaluation of the facilities and the structures based on whether or not they have HVAC. I'm not asking for any budget requirement, but I think we should know as legislators what facilities have HVAC, which ones cannot be retrofitted. Is there a possibility that engineering could do an evaluation of that and get us a cost estimate?
A cost estimate? I'm absolutely not.
Well, here, let me make sense of what I'm saying. You said there are several facilities. Example you gave was a 5-story facility. Air conditioning might not be pragmatic, but it's possible. There's a way to do it. I mean, I had to cool off my attic with a ductless facility because it would be difficult, so it cost us more money. But just knowing what we could do to provide a little bit more safety for the inmates is what I'm concerned about. These hot days that we see in the summertime, to me, are concerning. And from what I understand, they actually had a seizure over in the women's facility because of the lack of air circulation. So I just like to know if that's something that we could undergo to find out, to give us information. I would like to know specifically what it would cost to upgrade these facilities where inmates are at. You're saying engineering can't do that?
To get you an accurate figure, you would have to go, can engineering do it? Absolutely. I could probably sit down and have that conversation with you today about whether it's possible. I know every prison in the state of Indiana that well, but what I cannot do is calculate the cost of that. That would be to get the cost of that calculated, to go back, bring and measure the size of cooling units, the structures that would have, the modifications of the structures that would have to be made to allow it. That would cost a lot of engineering. That's not something I can have off the top of my head. That we would have to get a company to come in and do something like that. I can work with the Department of Administration, see what they have in mind and how we could do a project of that scale, if that's...
No, I'm not. That's the chairman in the Office of Budget. I don't run the fiscal of the state. But I just think it's something that we need to take a look at so that we have a better perspective. I'm really concerned about the fact that we could have a fatality based on the amount of heat that we're seeing in the summertime in the state of Indiana. And I know that there's some controversy going on in the women's facility right now because of that situation. So I just feel like we should at least look at it if that's something that's considered.
I think Mr. Orm and you will continue to have conversations, and we'll wait to hear what those conversations produce.
Who's that?
Well, you and Mr. Orm?
Me and you?
Certainly.
Okay, contact my office and let's set up a time to
I'll
talk.
have my legislative
Thank you.
people do that, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. Next is the Indiana State Fair Commission, Mr. Fedenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John Peffenberger. I'm the Vice President, Chief Financial Officer of the State Fair Commission, joined today by our Executive Director, Cindy Hoy. We're here today to request funding for architecture and engineering work, pre-construction costs, site evaluation work, and construction management fees for the Fall Creek Pavilion project at the State Fairgrounds. As you all know, the Fall Creek Pavilion project is currently paused, and this funding will allow the commission to pay remaining outstanding balances due to A&E firms and construction management firms. We respectfully request your approval to release the necessary funds and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So is this the only funding you've received today for all of the A&E?
We've received $2.5 million in the previous fiscal year.
So you are due to pay back the architects, engineers, and you also had construction management, even though there was no construction?
So we had design costs with the A&E. We also had pre-construction costs. We had costs associated with moving various tenants and buildings that were going to be demolished around the campus as well.
So you paid for the removal of various tenants to other parts, and that's part of the total almost $3 million bill?
That is part of the total, yes.
Over $3 million. And so the construction management fees, what did they come out to be?
Construction management fees are about $150,000.
And then going forward, are all the plans you have drawn up, assuming sometime in the future that this plan actually comes to fruition, is there some sort of pledge that nothing will be altered or changed and that you can immediately break ground?
Yes, the plans are complete and ready to go, shovel ready.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Representative Porter.
So we're asking for $779,000 plus for pre-work. So it says, I know this project is on pause. Do you know how long pause means? How long that pause button? Is it long, short, or what?
We're unclear on what pause means right now.
Okay, so is this a change order also?
No.
Okay. So no one's elaborated on what the word pause means.
That's correct.
And in hearing from, Mr. Chairman, hearing from the previous speaker in regards to the roof replacement and how favorable it is for construction, why are we utilizing this time to pause something that I think this is a good time? It's favorable in regards to cost of investing in the pavilion. I mean, that's just my question in regards to that. We're pausing something that may be economically feasible to do during this time. And if we're moving forward with some projects but others, and I know this has always been a contentious conversation in regards to the quote-unquote pavilion or the hog place. But that's my question, Mr. Speaker. I mean, Mr.
I think this
Chairman.
was part of the 32% decrease in GDP that the state of Indiana was effective. So this was a management decision by those in charge of the management of the budget. Further question? Senator Taylor.
Again, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to speak specifically about the evaluation, site work, and management fees for the Ball Creek Pavilion. The project, so you had already worked up the project and was ready to move and actually got funded, right?
We did not make it to bond funding, no.
Well, technically you were. You actually were bond funded, and then you were said that because of the GDP, you're not gonna receive it, right?
The lease appropriation was approved for this current FY21 fiscal year.
Okay, so here's the question for you. In regards to that lease appropriation, if the building were completed, would you be producing revenue from that facility?
We would, yes.
And so would that revenue go to debt service, or would it go to funding of the state fair?
The revenue would fund the state fair's operations.
Okay, so in actuality, that debt service would have had a return on investment to the state fair?
That's correct.
All right. So now that you don't have that facility, how do you plan on paying going forward? I mean, I'm assuming that you had done projections and had evaluations on who would utilize the facility and how it would be used. What has that done for your revenue projections for the state fair?
Depending on what paused means, it can affect the timeline of our future revenue projections, but the project was not set to be completed until January of 2022.
Okay.
So right now, given the current situation with the pandemic and the fact that we're an event business, we've lost significant revenue already, so things have started sort of from scratch for us right now.
Okay. And you could say, no, I cannot answer this question. So in other words, fiscal year 21 through 23, which will be in the budget session next year, you maybe would produce revenue in 2022 that could be used for state fair facilities and state fair activities. And now you will not have that revenue, correct? So fiscal biennial budget 21 to 23, will you be coming to talk about here, I'll just say it. Will you just provide me with the difference before the next budget session on what the revenue generation is like?
Yeah,
Okay, just get that
We
to
have
me.
projected net revenue between $750 and $1 million a year for the Fair Commission.
All right. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Further question? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is university projects. Purdue University, Ms. Brock-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Susan Brock-Williams, Director of Government Relations for Purdue. I have with me today Rob Weinkoop, who is Associate VP of Auxiliary Services for Purdue, and he'll represent us on the PMU project, and then I'll talk about the land purchase. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Again, my name is Rob Weinkoop from Purdue University, and we're here to request authorization to proceed on the planning, financing, award of construction, and construction on the renovation of the Purdue Memorial Union ground floor. This is a $47 million total project that will renovate over 67,000 square feet of the ground floor of our union. It will, dramatically improve the dining in that ground floor. It will also consolidate a number of old air conditioning systems. We'll put in brand new mechanical and plumbing systems, some of which are close to 100 years old. It will also increase kitchen capacity. And then finally, it'll increase the seating in that space from 870 seats to 1,253, which is pretty critical for us, particularly from a student perspective, because it will allow significantly more programmable space for our students, for concerts, for open mics, for drama and things like that, and really activate the ground floor of that building. This project also includes the building of 2 new terraces on the south end of the Union that will allow folks from the south side of the Union to be able to enter into the building through a series of terraces down into the ground floor, which will also further activate the space for our students.
Questions? Senator Talion.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a number of questions about this project and about the fact that we're doing it right now. I understand that the auxiliary funds that are going to fund about half of this are from housing and dining.
That's correct.
And just to be fair, I did talk to Susan yesterday and say that I would be interested in some answers to some of these questions. You know, we have lots of things going on in the state of Indiana with COVID right now, and what's going to be happening with the universities and what kind of actual student count you're going to have, and whether there will be revenue loss on any of these things. And what I'm trying to find out is we fund, and Purdue, all the universities do this, but Purdue funds a number of contracts that you have existing that are funded by the housing and dining funds, right? And I'm trying to find out how much money a student pays basically per year to fund all of the current projects.
So they pay tuition, right? So that's part
Yeah,
of it.
that's in a different
And then
category.
they also will pay for a variety of different meal plans that could be anywhere from, I think, $2,500 to just about $5,000 a year for that meal plan. Couple things. This, first, I think you guys know this, that this project was approved by our Board of Trustees in April, and then also earlier this summer by the Commission on Higher Education. Secondly, the way that the schedule for this has been laid out is we will review this again in September with the board to see where we were. I mean, right now, we've conservatively budgeted for the fall. Our numbers look good as far as students coming back. We haven't even tapped in yet to our wait list of students, and so I think we'll have a better sense April 24th, early September, what our numbers look like. But right now, they're very strong. We have close to 35,000 students that have said they are coming back to campus and are planning on coming back to campus.
But that didn't answer my question at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out, you know, we have, do you have an average price, an average for what is housing and dining at Purdue?
$10,000 for an in-state student, and then again, anywhere from $25,000 to about $5,000 for a meal plan.
Plus about 5. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out, of that amount of money, how much are students paying for all of these different projects that you have that are paid for through this dining and housing fund?
Right now, I honestly don't know, unless you, I mean, I don't have one, I can't think of one off the top of my head. The two new res halls that are being opened this fall were done in a partnership with Plenary, so that is a public-private partnership.
Right,
And the students will continue to pay, they'll pay board and room just as they normally did. So maybe I'm misunderstanding your question.
Well, yeah. So we have, over the years, approved a whole number of projects that are like this, that are paid for through auxiliary housing dining funds, right? Right?
That's
Do you
correct.
have any idea how many of those are outstanding?
I don't know.
Currently?
The only one I can think off the top of my head right now is a major bathroom project in which we're replacing and updating bathrooms in all of the res halls. I don't know the total of that project, but it is a significant dollar amount. I don't have the 10-year capital plan in front of me, but we can certainly get with you and share that with you.
All right, so now we've got a $47 million project that is going to be half paid out of the housing dining. How much does this cost per student per year? Do we know that?
I don't know the answer to that question. What I can tell you is that this is a $47 million project. This project will be paid for. We've also entered into an agreement with Aramark as well. They will pay $25 million of this $47 million. The remainder of it will come from R&R funds that are desperately needed to replace these mechanicals in this building. We'll go ahead and accelerate those and then pay for that R&R up front, and then the remainder, the 10 million or so, will come from reserves at housing and dining.
All right, well, I still would like to know, you know, how much money are we piling on to student fees to pay for all of these projects? And I guess, so that's question number one.
Yep, and I can tell you for this project, we're not piling on to student fees for this
Well,
project.
it's coming out of housing and dining, and even though you're gonna get $25 million from Airmark up front on this, those kids are still the ones that are paying for the money. The kids are paying, whether it goes directly to you or whether it goes through the Airmark contract, the kids are paying. And so I'm just trying to get, you know, I'm not saying that this project doesn't
I
need
get
to
it. I
be
get it.
done.
I get
But
it.
I'm trying to get an idea of what we are charging our students. And then my second question to you is this. I know you said that you have strong numbers, you're expecting strong numbers from the fall.
Yep.
But some of those people have decided to be virtual, right? They're not coming.
A small portion of them so far, yes.
All right, so we're not gonna, so those people are not gonna be paying into this housing and dining fund. Do you have any idea what your revenue loss projection might be for the next year?
Yeah, so we talked with our budget folks before this meeting. We don't expect, as I said earlier, we don't expect a revenue shortfall at this point, given the conservative way that we budgeted this. Additionally, we have not, if there is significant melt between now and the start of school, we haven't tapped into our wait list yet. And there's a significant wait list of students that want to come to Purdue that have been waitlisted that I'm sure as the melt occurs, will be more than happy to attend Purdue University in the fall.
All right, so you're expecting that you're not gonna have a revenue shortfall.
As it
because
stands
of
today, we feel pretty comfortable. But again, it is a fluid situation, which is why we'll review this project again in September with the Board of Trustees. And we'll be in a position on this project in September, because there will be no major construction that will be done, to reevaluate and decide whether we need to move, if we can continue to move forward. We think we will.
All right, so now I understand that this project was approved in April, but that was before a lot of stuff hit the fan, right? I mean, a lot of things have happened since April. So I guess my next question is, why do we need to approve this money now? Why do you need to do this project now and then wait for September?
Well, the project will not be completed until January of 2022, and we believe at that point we'll be much in a normal state of affairs, and we'll have the space that we need. Quite frankly, that to do it this way will save a significant amount of money to build another dining hall on our own that would cost us in excess of $50 million to do. And so this is a creative way to solve an issue for what is needed on campus, which is more dining across, or better spaced out dining for our students across campus. So we'll be prepared in January of 2022 for that, which is why our board decided to move forward with this project.
All right, well, I guess that's the end of my questions, but I really reiterate, I would like to get an idea from Purdue University about how many of these programs that you have either in progress now or under contract now or working that are paid for by student housing and dining fees, and how much it actually costs each student per year to do all these projects. I would like to get that information.
I think we're happy to get with you. We might be just passing here in our communication, but it's covered by room and board and tuition. That's how these projects are covered. That's where the revenue comes from. So.
Exactly. That's exactly
And
my
we haven't
point.
raised it, and we haven't raised tuition in 7+ years, and so that's exactly where the money's coming from.
Yeah, well,
and
the
continues to
tuition's
come
a
from.
different pile of money. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Brown?
Children or the students sign their housing contracts in the spring. Some of them are probably not coming back.
That's correct.
So are they required to honor those housing contracts?
They are not at this point.
And do you require any student who's admitted and decides to go to Purdue, do any of them have to live on campus regardless of your choices?
They do not. However, 94% of first year, 95% of first year students do in fact live on campus, but there's no requirement that they live on campus.
And when they make that choice with respect to then paying room and board, they have options in terms of housing and/or dining options that they can choose from?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you. Susan, you still?
So the second project is a land acquisition. It's a parcel of land at North 375 West in West Lafayette. It will include 225 acres of land immediately east of the Agronomy Center for Research and Education and the Animal Sciences Research and Education Center. The purchase of this land will expand our research from 2,900 acres to 3,125 acres, which is an increase of 8%. The purchase price is $3 million, which is less than the appraised value, $13,333 per acre. We'll be using gift funds, operating fund reserves, and operating funds of $500,000. This will allow us to do some uniform high-quality soils and large plot dimension research, which is needed for modern agricultural research and is especially conducive to agricultural research related to robotics, aerial work, and autonomous vehicles.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Susan, can you said $3 million. What's the other $10 million for? I thought I heard you say three. Did you say, misspeak? I thought you said the acquisition of 225 acres was $3 million. Is it $13 million?
The purchase price is $3 million, yes.
Maybe I'm looking at something different. No, you've got $13,460,000. What's the other $10 million?
What's the price per acre?
Hold on.
It could be a misprint. I don't.
Well, the total cost of the purchase is $3 million.
Okay.
Does the agenda say 13 million?
Susan, that's not important. Let's move on. If I did just a simple calculation, I see it's $59,000 an acre if you use the 13 million. Is there something that I don't know about farmland and that's pretty high? And you said it's below appraisal value? So you're getting equity? This land is below appraisal value?
Well, the cost per acre is $13,333.
Oh, okay.
We believe that's a fair price. The land solely based on agricultural use had comparables of $10,800 per acre. But because this land is right next to a neighborhood, it was right for development. There's a subdivision right next to it. So the portion of the land valued for that would have been $20,000 per acre. So the $13,333 is in between the ag use and then also the development price.
Okay. And this McKinnis Farm Corporation, is this a family?
Yes.
Okay. Are they donors or part of the Alumni Association of Purdue?
I don't think so. It's the McKinnis Farm Corporation. They approached us about buying the land. We'd had our eye on the land since the 1970s, actually. So we were very happy to have them approach us about buying this land from them.
And it's all, you can use it all, there's no wetlands or anything like that?
Yes, it increases the amount of research land that we have now to allow us to do more kinds of research that we can't do today because of now the increased space.
I don't want to hold you accountable to this, but, because things could change, you might not even be here. But you said it's next to the campus?
Yeah, it's between 231 and 65, so it's north of 52, if you know where the Walmart is, off of the Sagamore Parkway. So
I
it's
do.
not, it's a little further away, but yeah,
All right.
it's near the golf courses, kind of.
So you could use this land for expansion too, right?
Oh, this will be for ag research for sure, for
Okay.
years to come, yes. I
Okay.
can commit to that.
Oh, well,
Yes.
I don't want you to commit to that. You know,
Yeah.
president could change, you could.
That's true,
Yeah.
that's true.
So, the reason why I'm asking all these questions is because I get it that there's a need to have research. I guess for me, the difficulty is that the $13 million, or excuse me, the $3 million you're using for the land purchase, is a auxiliary fund, and it's gonna come out of existing funds for Purdue, right?
Mm-hmm. No, this says gift.
That's a lot, well,
It says gift.
gift funds of
Gift funds,
12.3.
operating funds, okay, you want me to break it down? I can do that.
Yeah, the gift
Okay.
funds and the operating funds are, you know, so they got a donation or a gift from the foundation of 12.3 million?
I'm not sure where the gift funds come from, if it's from the foundation or not, but
Okay.
yes. 1.8 million roughly.
Mr. Jackson has some input.
Let me clarify that. The purchase price is $3 million. I'm not sure how the misprint made it in here. The gift fund amount is a little bit over $1.8 million, not the 12.3. To be specific, I have $1,839,445 for a purchase price of, with the same operating funds reserves and the other operating fund dollars.
Can
for
you
a
give
total
me the
purchase
correct
price.
number for the 13 million, which was what?
$1,839,445.
She said it cost 3 million for the property.
That's the gift fund amount. If you
Oh.
add that gift fund amount at the bottom, the 1.8.
I got that.
Plus the 660, plus the 500,000, you get to exactly, I think exactly 3 million.
Thank you for clarifying that. That made me nervous, 13 million, so, yes.
Yeah, that made
3
me
million.
nervous too. We were paying a pretty penny of $59,000 a acre,
Yeah.
or they were. They can spend their money how they want to. Okay, that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. Thank you.
Senator Brown? Okay. Have you had any discussion with county officials about what this will do to the property tax base?
Yes, we estimate it's about a $6,000 per year impact on the local property tax revenue.
And this has been discussed with county officials?
That's how we received the information, yes, to know that. I can go back and double check that for you.
Okay. Further questions? Mr. Jackson?
And just to, pardon me, just to further clarify, I'm looking at the CHE, the June 11th agenda, and it does have this at the 3 million price with
Okay.
these other
Yes.
amounts mentioned.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to amend these numbers to accurately reflect what they should be? Okay, so the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So should it be 3 million?
The grand total is 3 million instead of that 13.4 number.
Uh-huh.
And the gift funds amount is
1,839,445.
correct.
Okay, will you change those to reflect, the minutes will reflect that? So those numbers are changed.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. Next is Indiana University, Dr. Morrison.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and staff. Pleasure to be with you again this morning. On behalf of Indiana University, I want to propose your consideration and approval of our regional campus deferred R&R funds for the current biennium. It is $8.1 million to be to address projects on 4 of our regional campuses. And these are straight, rather small R&R projects that deal with roofs, parapet walls, envelopes, HVAC systems, laboratories, plumbing, and window systems throughout the regional campus system. The General Assembly, over the last several biennia, has appropriated funds for R&R on the regional campuses. We've been grateful for that, and it has allowed us to put a big dent in our deferred maintenance on those regional campus facilities. Again, total is $8.1 million, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Vincennes University, Mr. Hahn.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, staff. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you again. I have one project for your consideration today, the Advanced Manufacturing Renovation Project. If this sounds familiar to some of you, it was part of the 2019 budget bill. It was cash funded at $4 million and would have been proposed by my predecessor, Mr. Roth. This is an 18,000 square foot project on our Vincennes campus, and it will modify 2 existing buildings, the Indiana Center for Applied Technology and our Technology Center, which is a separate building. There'll be 3 programs impacted by this investment. Product design, which is a major in additive manufacturing, which is a fancy word for 3D printing, as well as our precision manufacturing and precision tooling, as well as CNC machining. The goal with this project in the 2 buildings is to grow our product design major. We are currently constrained by the lab as it is now and can't take any more students. It's a very popular major with great job placement in industries like manufacturing, aerospace, life science, and motorsports. And to do so, we'll be moving into where some of the Herco, an Indiana company, Herco's CNC machines are now. That space with the advanced CNC machines has become too small. Ventilation is a challenge. The machines have grown in size, and so they're too close to each other. It doesn't allow for a good training lab. So we'll be moving some of those machines to a new space, improve the lighting, and improve the spacing, which is incredibly important at this time too, so that we have the appropriate amount of space around the machines. This will allow us to grow all 3 programs. The machining and the CNC degrees have a 100% job placement, oftentimes with numerous offers. As I said earlier, this is funded by a cash appropriation from the 2019 budget. Most of the cost is in the structure and the mechanical, because it's pretty invasive to move these machines to change ventilation and to change electrical. But as you'll notice, the assignable square feet and the gross square feet are very close. We're not adding any new square feet to campus, simply rearranging in a better way to grow our programs.
Questions for Mr. Hahn? Senator Italian?
Yeah, just a question about this. Is this one of the cash-funded projects that we approved that we decided to not fund by cash?
Pardon?
So, we did a number of projects that were going to be cash-funded, right? University projects. And then I thought we decided not to cash fund those projects, but we are doing cash on this one?
This was not part of the list of the 1006 going forward.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry.
That's okay. 1007, I guess, or whatever it was. 1007. Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll start on review items. The dual credit, Mr. Joseph Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and staff for taking the time to review our grant to CHE for dual credit today. I have with me Dr. Matt Butler, our Vice President of Engagement as well. Thanks again for allowing me to take a few minutes to tell you a little about our organization. We were established in 1980 as an Indiana 501c3 corporation with the mission of improving access and affordability in higher education. 4-decade history of helping Hoosiers and their families achieve their educational dreams by creating a revolving fund of capital and supporting state education initiatives. A couple of quick examples. We were initial funder of the Indiana Career and Post-Secondary Advancement Center back in the 1980s. More recently, since 2002, we've partnered with the Commission for Higher Ed on a variety of projects, including pilot STEM programs, 21st Century Scholars, FAFSA completion, and more. And more recently than that, we worked with the Governor's Workforce Cabinet to promote and provide counseling on the Workforce Ready Grant program. In 2009, we launched the first of its kind online comparison tool to promote transparency in private education loan pricing called the InvestEd Student Marketplace, very similar to a Travelocity or a Kayak, something like that. That tool is currently placed in 30 colleges around the state of Indiana. In 2013, some of you may remember our statute was amended. It added to us the authority to originate direct education loans for payment of tuition. And in addition to that, that was in addition to our existing authority to originate refinancing loans for students and their families. It also codified decades of providing financial aid literacy, and we differentiate financial aid literacy from financial literacy. Paying for college is a little different than just balancing a checkbook, something like that. It's a little more complicated. But it codified our decades of financial aid literacy and educational tools for students, their families, and Indiana colleges and universities with respect to responsibly financing the cost of education. This really is our most important mission, role, part of our statutory mission. We reach every corner of the state of Indiana and have for the last 2 decades for sure, to help broaden the spectrum of education and workforce development around the state. It's an effort that's grown a great deal since I arrived here in 2002. Just a small sample of what happened in the last year that we took notes on this, calendar year 19. 572 events virtually all over the state, every corner. 156 high schools, 51,000 attendees around the state of Indiana. 30,000 guides were distributed, and over 10,000 individuals or their families were received an individual consultation. And that is very important because we meet people where they are, whether it's urban, rural, suburban, answering their questions by phone, text, chat, email, and lately Zoom, like everybody else, right? We also poll people at the end of those sessions, and 98% of the people who attended either one of our training sessions, counseling session, a train-the-trainer session that we do for counselors. We train, I think last year, around 800 school counselors around the state to help support them. 98% of those who received our services said that they would recommend us or that they found us helpful. So in 2005, we were asked to help give wings to an innovative idea to clear the road for aspiring scholars trying to fund their education. But we're having trouble getting their transcripts moved from point to point. So we were approached by CHE, Dr. Sauer, and asked us to help fund the development of what is now the transcript process. So that was probably the most successful example of us supporting education in Indiana. So I'll stop there. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Can we have Mr. Sauer, would you like?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And I'm glad that Mr. Wood mentioned the e-transcript program. That was something I did work on 15 years ago. It's one of the most successful programs we've had All high school students are able to send their transcripts electronically to college. Some 200,000 transcripts were sent last year, and it's all because of the seed money that started with a grant from the Indiana secondary market. The project before you is focusing on non-STEM dual credit teachers. I'd like to briefly describe the problem, the solution, and then the benefits of dual credit. The Higher Learning Commission, which is the regional accrediting group for Indiana and other Midwestern states, requires that dual credit teachers have a master's degree in the discipline that they're teaching, or a master's degree and 18 graduate credit hours in that discipline. There's a deadline that HLC has set for dual credit faculty having those qualifications. It was September 1st, 2022, but Commissioner Lovers requested an extension of that deadline because of COVID, and we heard just last week that that extension has been granted, that extension has now gone out one additional year to 2023. Last year, there were some 568 non-STEM teachers, and by non-STEM, I'm talking about English, history, Spanish, government, speech, that had a master's degree, but didn't have the 18 graduate credit hours in that discipline. And this proposal is aimed at that particular group. So the solution would be for the Commission to partner with CEL, the Center of Excellence in Leadership of Learning at UIndy, and to have institutions offer the graduate credit courses that are needed so that those dual credit faculty can become qualified. The Commission will help to market this program with CEL, and again, it's aimed only at those teachers who have the master's degree but lack the 18 credit hours in the discipline. Just a word or two about the benefits of dual credit. The Commission does track dual credit students and has done this for a number of years. And in general, dual credit students go to college, persist, and graduate from college in greater numbers than those who do not take dual credit. This is particularly helpful for underserved populations. Some 1/3 of the students who took dual credit courses last year were low income. And lastly, I'll just say that this is a program, dual credit, benefits financially those students. The Commission estimates that had those students paid full price, they would have paid a lot more, and in fact, they have saved $69 million by taking dual credit courses from our institutions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Wood or Mr. Sauer? Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. So, since 2013, in regards to refinancing loans, how successful has that been? You mentioned 2013.
Prior to 2013, we had the statutory authority to refinance student loans, either federal and/or private student loans for students and their families around the state of Indiana. And we do that now.
So how successful has it been, is the question?
Well, in the month of July, we did $6 million worth of them, and we anticipate probably close to $30 million this year in those kinds of loans. Most of them are probably experiencing double-digit or high single-digit interest rates, and we're able to lower that rate substantially.
Okay, more questions. Because this is something that I've focused on for the last 4 years, is the ICE-mail money. So my question also is, with this, excuse me, it has about $130 million in that program, right?
Right around $100 million in our fund balance, yes, sir.
100 million?
Yeah.
It's not 130 million anymore?
I don't think so. No, I mean, the investment balance, the general fund balance is right around $100 million.
Okay, and you turn around and gave $3 million to invest India, wherever it is, that dual credit. So you gave $3 million of dual credit.
Yes, sir.
And the results of that were, I'm sorry, I might have missed that. So you just got that money, right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the
You
question.
just gotten the $3 million,
Yeah, we had a request to provide a $3 million grant.
$3 million grant to Commission on Higher Education, correct? And now you have executive director, right?
I'm sorry?
You have executive director?
I'm their CEO, yes.
Yeah, okay, and you have a board?
Yes, sir, the 9-member board.
Is the
appointed
board
by the governor.
compensated?
Yes, sir.
What are the board compensation? What's the makeup of that board and how are they compensated?
No, not highly compensated. They're paid for their time.
Okay,
I can
they
get
pay,
you
okay,
scheduled.
stipend, pay for their time, money is transacted, is that correct? Is money transacted?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how much is that per board member or whatever?
I think, on average, it's, between $5 and $8 million, or, excuse me, $5,000 and $8,000 a year per
So-
member. We have, board meetings, committee meetings, et cetera.
So this boards get $5,000 to $8,000 per year to be on this board.
Yes, sir.
And how many board members do you have?
9.
And so, so this is, of course, this is a quasi-governmental agency that's up in Carmel, Indiana.
It's a 501c3 Indiana corporation, yes, sir.
$5,000 to $8,000 that they're compensated for.
Roughly,
Okay.
yeah. I can research that for you if you'd like.
Oh, I'll write you a letter.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions? Senator Talion.
Thank you. I'm a little confused about what we're doing here today. Is this $3 million money that they're asking for now? Or, yes, we're approving this as a,
This is $3 million from InvestEd to the Commission of Higher Education.
okay, that's, okay. And so my next question is, how does this program work exactly? Does the $3 million fund individual loans to individual teachers? Or do we spend the $3 million and give it to the teachers for free? I mean, how does that work?
No, the way this would work is that the cell would identify universities that are willing to offer the graduate courses that the teachers need in those non-STEM disciplines. Once the teachers would enroll in those classes, the university would then be reimbursed for the tuition. So none of this money would go directly to the teachers. It would go to the universities that were offering those courses.
Okay, and would this like pay for that course in full?
Well, actually, the hope here would be the teachers would not be involved in spending any money directly. They
That's
would-
what I want to know.
Yes,
Okay,
right,
all right.
exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions directly related to the proficiency of the program. You've said now that the extension has gone to 2023 for the program extension for the.
Yes. The deadline by which the dual credit faculty members are supposed to have that
Okay,
master's
great.
degree, yes.
That's extended by a year, so that does make sense to then provide this program to teachers. You, in your statement, in your letter to us, you put African American and Latino freshman grade point averages are climbing. Climbing is a very subjective word. What does that mean?
I can't answer the question precisely, but they have been going up, and the thing that we really have been monitoring, and which really I can speak to relative to this request, is that the students of color and low-income students benefit from taking dual credit courses. They attend college at a higher rate than those who don't take dual credit courses. They persist and they graduate in higher rates.
Well, I would figure that'd be the same for any student who took a dual credit course.
Yes, that is true.
All right.
Correct. That is true.
All right, well, You did, for some reason, in the letter, you actually break up African-American and Latino college freshmen. What about juniors and seniors and all those sophomores? You don't know any? You got
Well,
any statistics?
typically, most of the dual credit courses would be taken in the junior and senior years. There are some instances in which younger students could take some courses.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds a little bit. So $3 million you want to give to the Commission for Higher Education to support the non-STEM dual credit certification for teachers.
Correct.
Okay. How long have you had your, what is it called? It's in the, how long have you had your data collection and reporting expectation?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
There's an exhibit to the InvestEd letter that talks about the data you're going to collect.
Yeah, well, I can say from the commission standpoint that we do track every student who has been enrolled in a college course.
Great.
We have a unit record system, and we have been tracking, one of the things we have tracked is the success of dual credit students, because that's very important to us. And
Right. And you've got a demographic breakdown of awardees by ethnicity and race. What are those?
You know, I'm sorry, I don't have that communication. You wanna-
Yeah, I think the appendix center was a condition that they collect the information so we knew what the impact was of the grant.
Okay, so you
So
haven't been doing that before?
We weren't. This was a program that we're funding, but these are kind of the data points we thought people should collect. Some may be
So
available, some may
you're
not.
requiring CHE, I mean,
I think more of a suggestion, right?
well, I hope you require it, because I think that we need some dual credit certified teachers of color, and I hope you focus on it. Let me, speaking of that, in the InvestEd grant proposal that you have the college readiness report, 44,000 or 60% of high school class graduated with an average of 12 credit hours, right? I'd like to know the ethnic breakdown of that, if we can, okay? I'd like to get that data. And then, last but not least, you've got an interesting situation here where you've got teachers who don't meet the requirements. What do you think just providing a grant to these teachers is gonna, I'm assuming that the school would kind of encourage these teachers to get certified. So how does providing a grant, I mean, most school districts would pay for their teachers to actually get these degrees or they usually do. How does CHE think that just providing a grant for teachers to get into this is gonna help?
Well, I'm not sure that school districts are providing the funds for their teachers to become credentialed. We've had one of the reasons why we wanted to work with CEL is there were two previous STEM grants that went to CEL that were very similar to the request that you have before you. And the experience clearly is that the teachers really would benefit from having, the school districts wouldn't pay to get them credentialed. So they would either have to pay themselves or through state funds would provide the tuition costs that would enable them to take the classes.
Okay, good. So you've got a kind of a precedent for this.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, two successful cycles.
Good. So I'd like the demographic makeup of the teachers that were in that program too, right?
I'm sorry?
So you would be able to give me the data
Yes.
on what the ethnic makeup of the teachers
Absolutely.
who took advantage of those two other cycles?
Yes, in fact.
Okay.
That's one of the things that we did talk over with CEL, and we definitely will be collecting that data.
Okay. You don't have it already?
We don't, the Commission for Higher Ed doesn't really collect data on teachers. But as a part of this grant, we will be collecting this data so that we can track those teachers.
Okay, but the prior, I want to make sure you understand what I'm asking you
Yeah.
for then, because maybe you can't provide it to me. I'm asking for the 2 successful cycles for STEM.
Right.
Has the data been collected on the ethnic makeup of the teachers who took advantage of it?
And I know that in the last cycle, that data has been collected.
Thank you. That's
I'm
great.
not sure about the one before that.
Okay, whichever one you have is be appropriate.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Senator Brown?
So my understanding is this new dual thank you, Mr. Sauer, the new dual requirement of a master's plus 18 hours in the area, that came from SEL. And so how many teachers before that new additional requirement came down, how many teachers did we have in the state who were teaching dual credit? Do we know?
How many teachers are teaching dual credit?
Were before this new requirement?
I don't know. We only started to look at teachers when this requirement was put in place, and it became apparent that we had a significant number of teachers, both in STEM and non-STEM fields, that did not meet the HLC requirement.
So from your notes, 200 to 700 teachers would benefit by these monies, these $3 million, to get them where they need to be, so they could either start or continue teaching non-STEM dual credit, right?
Yes.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that we do know that there were 568 teachers in non-STEM fields who had a master's, typically in education, but who lacked those 18 hours. We actually have a breakdown by those who lack 1 to 6 hours, 7 to 12, 13 to 18. And it sort of depends on who shows up and how many credits they need. Under the most optimistic scenario, so in other words, assuming that in those brackets that I just described, the teachers lack the lower number of credit hours, theoretically, we might be able to credential all 568 of those. But that's, to me, it's unrealistic. I think because we know that we're going to get a number of those who need those, a large number of credits. So we might be able to credential half or more of those 568 teachers.
So I do know of one school district in my area that was going to pay for the teachers who had been dual credit, now had an extra burden if they didn't match, but not everybody's going to. So this $3 million would either be money out of the school's budget or money out of the teacher's budget.
Correct.
So how did it come about that CHE approached, or did you approach InvestEd about this filling in the gap, so to speak?
Well, Joe may want to talk about the earliest conversations, but this clearly was identified as a need. We were looking for partners, and as was previously mentioned, with the e-transcript initiative, which has really been a terrific program, that program got started through money that was that came from the Indiana secondary market. So when the idea was hatched, this seemed to be a really good route to go.
Well, I guess my point was really that the Department of Education, without filling this gap, was looking at the burden being pushed back onto the teachers, who probably enjoy teaching dual credit, and or the school systems. And so instead of them reaching out, you reached out to InvestEd, which is interesting, and I'm glad you did, because not only is it saving our teachers $3 million, it's also impacting our students by what you've said about a $69 million estimate that we're saving our students who are taking dual credit, so that they are not then incurring that additional tuition that they would have to if they didn't have those.
Correct.
So I was just kind of curious about the origin of it.
Right.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Porter?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple. So, piggyback on Senator Brown, if we're going to feel the need, and I've been involved with the dual credit program, why was this not part of your budget request to the Budget Committee? Because this has been going on for a while. Why did not you, and you've been around for a long time also, not request that to the Budget Committee?
Right. Well, let me say there have been 4 rounds of STEM Teach funding that has come to the Commission and that we have awarded to institutions. This cell received in the last 2 cycles of STEM Teach, and we're right halfway through that latest cycle. Those monies went to cell to essentially replicate this program. I mean, or this program replicates STEM Teach, where the monies were providing the tuition that the teachers would normally have to pay.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Indiana Public Broadcasting. Mr. Newman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mark Newman representing Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations. Thank you for permitting me to join you for today's State Budget Committee meeting. In behalf of all of our stations and their station managers, thank you for your continued support during this period of economic hardship. Public broadcasting has always been careful with its spending and strives to stretch every public dollar by using it wisely and leveraging it with private support. On average, IPBS has historically matched every dollar of public support with $11 from the private sector. This has been a public-private partnership that is working. Our commitment to Indiana is evident in multiple ways. Public affairs is one way, community engagement is another way, and of course, there is our historic commitment to early childhood education and lifelong learning. During this COVID-19 pandemic, with so much in flux, IPBS member stations have taken important steps to bring stability to K-12 students, teachers, and parents throughout Indiana. Our stations coordinated a remote learning platform in partnership with the Indiana Department of Education that remains in use today. The platform utilizes curated PBS programming and interactive resources that are available over the air at no charge to users and align with the Department of Education curriculum standards. Several IPBS stations have taken their education mandate further. In Evansville, WNIN is partnering with the Evansville-Vanderburgh School Corporation to air specially produced classroom lessons that focus on an array of subjects for local K-12 students. Similarly, Jay County School Corporation is developing an e-learning capability through a partnership with WIPB in Muncie. The same is true for WNIT and the schools it serves in and around South Bend. Also, WFYI in Indianapolis worked with the Department of Education to produce a series of social emotional learning videos that will begin airing throughout the state very soon. This was all done out of necessity to conclude the last school year, ensure that resources were in place to boost summer learning, and to prepare as much as possible for the unknowns of the new fall semester that is nearly upon us. Opportunities continue to emerge and will be pursued to ensure that high-quality education materials and opportunities remain available to all students. With this background, the current budget bill calls for $3.675 million to be distributed in fiscal year 2021 to the 9 public radio and 8 public television stations in Indiana. However, Due to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency and the 15% reserve target imposed by the state budget agency, we are seeking $3,123,750. We've worked with the state budget agency to determine this number and will certainly do our part to stem the tide of the unprecedented circumstances we all find ourselves in. Of the $3,123,750, and consistent with the budget bill language, $446,250 is earmarked for equal distribution to our member radio stations. $2,677,500 is designated for our television stations. Finally, consistent with the last budget, we are requesting the distribution be made in 2 payments, 75% of the total coming in August 2020, and the remaining 25% in January 2021. The committee members should have a letter from me detailing the amounts proposed for each station and this requested payment schedule. Lastly, I must also tell you that we are seeking a competitive grant of federal funds in the amount of $6.9 million from the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Program, the GEAR Grant Program, to assist schools with their distance learning efforts. Our proposed project will address connectivity for students statewide using data casting from Indiana Public Broadcasting stations. Data casting overcomes the unmet need for internet access, including internet access issues that hotspots do not resolve. It has game-changing potential for any community in the state where broadband connection is a challenge. I'm happy to address any questions from the committee, and again, I want to express my gratitude on behalf of our station managers for your time today.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Talion.
Not so much a question, but just a comment. I want to congratulate the public broadcasting stations. You guys do a tremendous job on a really small budget.
Thank you.
And the only thing that I hate to see, and I say it every time, I hate to see that you have to take out 15% on but I am very glad to say, you said something about applying for a $6 million grant from where?
The governor has established an emergency education relief fund totaling
Okay.
$61 million. We're seeking $6.9 million from that.
All right, good. Well, I hope you get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment or question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have an agenda that has been amended with the correct number. Are there any further motions to remove items from the agenda? Senator Taylor?
Mr. Chairman, I don't ask that you remove anything. As a matter of fact, I think it needs to be a clarification under the gift funds, under the summary section. I think the only change you made was in the actual presentation. And if you go to the gift funds, it should be 1.8 million instead of 12.3.
Okay, so the cost summary table will need to be changed, okay?
Am I correct on that? I believe I am, but I just wanted to make sure, point of clarification.
Senator Talion, did you have a question?
Comment, and again, I'm not asking for anything to be removed, but I think that the Purdue project brings out a question that we should all have the answer to. We constantly, over the years, approve projects that are big number projects that are going to be paid for by student housing funds. And I would really like to see exactly what we've approved over the last decade and find out how much money is sitting out there and how much of that 10 million, or I'm sorry, the 10 plus 5, $15,000 a year that the students are paying at Purdue average is paying for all of these major renovations. I think that we need to see that as a big picture item, because that's a huge project, and it's only one of many. So I'm just asking if somehow we could get that information and get a bigger picture look at what's going on with the university projects and how much it's costing the kids.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the agenda? It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? All those in favor say aye. 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 The agenda is approved. Next, we will go to the discussion item. We're going to talk about the federal CARES funding update. Mr. Johnson, thank you for being here today. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me back from our last presentation. In June, we had, I gave a presentation to the group that really talked about starting at the federal program level, the federal legislation, and then sort of winnowing it down to state government, and talked about some of the grants that had been distributed not only to public entities, but then also to hospitals and other groups, businesses that those funds did not pass through the state of Indiana. Today, I really want to talk about the funds that pass through or come to the state of Indiana. Since we were here in June, there hasn't been, well, there's been several issuances of U.S. Treasury guidance. There is a report that was filed with the Office of Inspector General of the U.S. Treasury, and we'll talk about that in a second. That's the basis of one of the slides that I want to walk through. But so far, the supplemental funding, as we talked before, there were funds that come through to state agencies, and that's the supplemental funding of about $1 billion as of July of this year. And then the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is the $2.4 billion fund that we touched on before. This is a tough slide to read, and so I will refer to certain sections of it in your handouts, but slides 3 through 5 is a summary of these supplemental grants that come directly to state agencies. And there's approximately 35 of these programs. This is on the State Budget Agency website, and it's updated weekly. And so from left to right is the agency, the state agency that has received the award. You have the award description. As cryptic as that may be in some cases, that's what the federal government has labeled these particular grants. You have the amount of the award and the amount of the expenditure of that award through that week. One thing that I will say, if you went out to the state budget agency website at this moment, the totals would not tie to the report that I've given you for the following reason, and I'm going to highlight a couple of these, is the mechanism that we've set up for posting it to the website is that there has to be an expenditure. We have some awards where the money has not been spent yet, and so I'll highlight a couple of those that if you went out to the website, you wouldn't really see this award listed. But I'll touch on a few of these awards, and then we'll stop at the end of these slides and be happy to answer any particular questions on any grant. But this is sort of a good segue from Mr. Newman. He referred to the governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. That's the second item on slide 3, which is the $61.6 million award. It is right now a joint effort between the governor's office, Department of Education, and the Commission for Higher Ed. They've published an RFP or an application process. Those applications have been received. They're under the review. I will not speak to Mr. Newman's chances, but I'm sure it was very competitive, and the committee will be giving it all the due diligence it requires. The focus on that program, though, is really some of the things that he touched on: devices, connectivity, and then professional development for training in a COVID remote learning environment. Another item that I wanted to touch on, and so as an example, going back to my point of this would be a grant that's not on the website because we haven't spent any of the money yet. It's been awarded to the state of Indiana, but we're still in the due diligence application process. And once those get awarded and the awardees start spending money, it'll show up on the website. I am going to look at that technicality to see if we can get that uploaded as well, even though the money hasn't been spent yet. Another item on this page is the Child Care and Development Block Grant Fund. That is funding. You can see the substantial amount. It was awarded close to $79 million. It's been about $60 million has been spent. There's been over 12,000 distributions. It's a monthly distribution that goes out to child care entities. One of the reasons that it got out of the gate really quick is there's already a Child Care Development Block Grant Program, and it has not been impacted programmatically by COVID, that they're changing their processes significantly because of it. So they were able to take the same universe of child care entities and really get the money moving very quickly to augment already the grant that they had received. Another one, a large award, is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. We touched on that last time. It's $214 million. It is a distribution that's primarily based on Title I formulas. School corporations still have to submit an application and a budget, and it's subject to reimbursements that happen twice a month. On the next page, you can see that the Department of Health has received many or several grants. The largest one is in the middle of their block. It is the laboratory or enhancing laboratory capacity, about $194 million. That's actually the combination of two grants, an $11 million and $183 million grant. And that is really, in this day and age of testing and contact tracing, it's to expand and enhance the capacity to do testing. Department of Health was required to put a strategic plan of how that grant money would be used over the next 2.5 years. That has been submitted, but that was due, I think, in the first or the middle of July, and so not a lot of money has been spent yet. And again, as a reminder, when state agencies receive money or awards and they work with their own subrecipients or contractors to help execute on the program, many times those are also on a reimbursement basis. And so the money is not just sent out the door to that contractor. It's the contractor has to submit their own invoices. They have to be reviewed by the state agency managing the program, and then approve those invoices, and then the money is forwarded to them. Another program that is additional funding for something that has been in place for some time is the child nutrition or the school lunch program, $164 million, of which about $88 million has been spent. It's, again, augmenting an existing program. It's based on reimbursement. There's set rates. It's based on the number of meals. Department of Education has their own website of how that school corporations and school lunch programs can go and access all of the claim forms and information on how to file those claims. And then at the bottom of this page is an example of a reimbursement program. This is through Federal Transit Administration coming to NDOT, and it's the Federal Transit, well, they just call it the Federal Transit CARES Act, but this is for the non-urban transit systems in the state of Indiana, $55.5 million. You can see that no money has been sent out the door yet. That is because there are established transit systems, and it's on a reimbursement basis, and it's on a quarterly disbursement. And so I forget the sequence, whether it's on the calendar basis or not, but it will be for 3 months, which they just started a couple of months ago. The invoices will come in. That transit team will review that and then send the money out after that review. Next page is really the primary grant for DWD is the about $20 million. They have about $31 million in total. The $20 million is mostly for augmenting their administrative costs for all of the greater volume of applications that they are processing. So you can see it's about $890 million in awards. About just under $200 million has been spent thus far. And some of these might still get augmented. I can't say that the federal government is done enhancing some of these programs, but this will be updated weekly with the spend data. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions on these supplemental grants that go to specific agencies.
Senator Tyne, go ahead.
Thank you. So these are just the monies that come through the agencies. This does not include the other money that like went directly to universities or some other things. And do you have a ballpark? Was that about another $1 billion?
It's actually about $2 billion.
The additional direct pay money was about $2?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
And
thanks.
in that, I think when I was here in June, so that category would be hospitals, higher ed, community health centers. A lot of it centers in the health and human services field. But another big one, just like we had the non-urban transit systems, a big award of, I think, $183 million for urbanized transit systems. So the Fort Wayne, South Bends, possibly NICD up in northwest Indiana. That was about $183 million. That goes directly to them. So that would be in that bucket as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Representative Hamilton.
Chairman, thank you, Chris. Just a couple questions. So that, for example, on the education dollars, the $214 million,
Right.
only 5 of which has been spent so far.
Yep.
Do you anticipate spending all of that? And
Absolutely. Title I is a routine program. I think it's just part of the process of filling out their application and submitting their budgets. And then that too is I understand it, on a reimbursement basis.
Okay.
But I've got that information from the DOE website.
Okay.
So I can't,
Great.
I'm not an education expert.
So all of this money, it's flowed to the state, and then we are dispersing it, or some of it will come to the state only once?
Only once it's spent. That's right. It's not all sitting in our coffers.
Okay, okay. And then you do also expect, I mean, most of this money, I guess I should ask, you expect it to be spent? Are there any areas where you're concerned we're going to leave money on the table, or?
No, not at all. Most of these grants, I think, have a September 30th, 2021 performance end period.
Okay.
So they have,
Little time.
there are certain requirements also to actually have the money obligated and committed well in advance of that. But I think the performance period is through the next, the fiscal year, federal fiscal year 21.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Taylor has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who's on the committee for the Emergency Education Relief Fund? You said there's a committee.
Yeah, I don't know the exact names.
Budget
but
agency might know.
I do know that Katie Jenner, the governor's education policy director, is on it, but I don't know the representatives from the Commission for Higher Ed and the Department of Education.
Can someone tell me who's on that from the Budget Committee, please? The budget agency got the money.
Well, they don't have, so in this particular.
Or they don't have the money, but they got the award.
Right.
Right.
But the review, the committee, you want to have the people that are the subject matter experts. This is more of the administration of the funding.
Right.
So, but we can get the names of the people that are
Thank you.
reviewing the applications.
Okay, and then the governor's, hold on. The other question I had was, the lieutenant governor's office got about $18 million. What is that used for?
That's the Community Development Block Grant, and
So
that's additional funding for an existing, that's a common grant program, and that goes out to smaller communities.
I know very well the CDBG fund. Last but not least, Title I, you said a lot of these were tied to Title I. There's been some discussion, or at least I've heard about discussion in regards to the pulling back if schools don't open of that Title I funding. Is that would that affect this at all?
Well, I hadn't heard that discussion about Title I.
Well, federal funding of schools if they don't open.
Okay, well, in this case, I haven't heard that
This has
at
already
all.
been awarded, so they can't actually pull back.
Well,
Okay.
it would take an action of Congress, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Porter has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Johnston, for being here again. The website, what's the status of the website? Is it up?
I believe so.
Okay, because, all right.
We'll send you the link.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So a couple more. And then early on, you talked about awards versus expenditures. And as you go through this, these are numbers that are there, but you said awards versus expenditures. And I can remember your last presentation, everything was in estimates.
Right.
So, all right, so now we're going from awards to versus expenditures to estimates. Our start off with estimates, now I'm just trying to make sure we get the lingo right.
Right.
Because as we talked before, I'm concerned that those dollars are gonna wind up being there, and we're not gonna spend all those dollars, because if you look at it now, we haven't expended a lot of dollars. I mean, they've been awarded,
right,
but they haven't been expended, and I'm still, in my mind, trying to deal with the word of estimates, last time.
I understand.
So,
In this particular case, these are awards where the state agency has received documentation from the federal awarding agency that the state of Indiana has received that specific dollar amount. That's why we've uploaded them to the website, because we have the documentation behind it. And so then, as Representative Hamilton had said, well, what is the lifespan of these awards? And most of them, if I recall, have a September 30th, 2021 expiration date.
okay, and will these entities who receive those dollars, will their names and dollars amount be on the website also?
On the, as far as what the state agency is spending the money on?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe it, if not the state budget agency website, it'll probably be on the auditor's transparency portal, because these same expenditures have a certain code that's being reflected on it, and so you'd be able to see who they've either subgranted it to, or if it's a contract, who they're spending the money with.
Okay, and you used the word probably, so.
Well, we'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you. I listen to those words. Thank you.
Proceed.
So this is Representative Porter, this is where I think we can go back to your estimates. You know, this is the bigger fund. Let's talk about the coronavirus relief fund. So the slide here really just gives you the rules as we know them today. It has to be unnecessary expenditures due to the public health emergency, not accounted for or in the most recently approved budget, and has to be for costs incurred between March and through the end of the year, or December 30th. I'm not sure why they picked December 30th, but they did. And then revenue replacement is not a permissible use. And then always the OIG from the U.S. Treasury can come out and well, is expected to come out and review the use of these funds. One of the things that we talked about last time is the major buckets of how we were thinking about how to use these funds. And those buckets were reimbursing ourselves for the direct expenditures, like personal protective equipment, testing expenses, other direct expenses related to fighting COVID-19. Another major bucket was just cost recovery for some payroll costs and other related costs. And then the other was sort of other relief and recovery programs. And that's where we talked about estimated, sort of taking the $2.4 billion and thinking about it is in large, budgeted groupings like that. Now, what I want to turn to next, and again, it's another busy chart here for you, is the first report that was filed with the Office of Inspector General with the U.S. Treasury was, I think, filed July 17th. It was for activities through June 30th. And so on the left-hand side of this slide, before we got to the break, and you'll see the category of spending, the expenses, commitments, and the total. That's exactly, this report, other than the right-hand side, is also on our website, the budget agency website. This is what was filed. We did not make up the category of spending. The Inspector General said, we want you to bucket your expenditures in these major categories. What we've tried to do on the right-hand side is identify those same agencies that have been involved. I'm going to back up one slide here because I think this is an important point. In managing these programs, we've talked about the program for local government. We've talked about identified workforce programs. IEDC was very active in the PPE acquisition and logistics market. Our activities out of the Coronavirus Relief Fund that are programmatic, we establish a memorandum of understanding with those agencies. And so at this time, either in process or we have the memorandum of understanding for these agencies. So the Finance Authority is working with the local government program. IEDC is working mostly with the PPE purchase. Department of Health, we have some costs that we're helping out in the testing and contact tracing activities. Family and Social Services Administration, we talked about the provider support or sustainability grant programs. Housing, you may have recently heard of the program for rent assistance. Workforce Development and Commission for Higher Ed, we're working on those workforce programs or administering those workforce programs. So I wanted to take a step back to this slide because where we talk about the actual dollar amounts, you'll see that this also, we have not spent a lot of money, but we've committed a lot of money to these programs. And so what I'd like to do is walk through, some of these. The first item, and again, under this category of expenditure, these were the groupings that the federal government asked us to respond to. transferred to other governments. So you can see that the total amount was $300 million. That's the local government program. Through June 30th, we had about 900,000 that had actually been sent out to local governments. That's now about $2.5 million. There have been 230 local units of government that have registered to use the program. And the IFA has conducted a series of webinars and conference calls with the Association of County Commissioners, the Association of Counties, and AIM to help walk people through the process to get those reimbursements in process. The payroll for public health and public and safety employees, again, we've got it down as a commitment. That's really an estimate. So one of the eligible expenses is for payroll expenses for our public health and public safety employees. Because the guidance has seemed to fluctuate over the last several months, we have not transferred or used this money yet to reimburse the state general fund for these costs, or the dedicated funds which funded those, because we didn't want to make a big transfer before the end of our fiscal year and then have differing guidance come out from the federal government that said, no, you can't use the money this way. And so we've held that, but this is an estimate of what we think that cost would be through June 30th. The next line is the same concept, except it's for non-public safety and non-public health agencies. And so it might be staff at other agencies that their time has been redirected to fighting COVID-19, and those would be eligible for reimbursement. And as we talked before, we're coding these expenses a certain way so we can flag these and continue to flag these over time. There were some telework expenses. That's what the fourth item is, improvements to telework capabilities of public employees. And those were just direct costs that we got from the Office of Technology. Medical expenses were some costs that for paid emergency sick leave and emergency family leave, as well as some additional costs at the Department of Correction for medical expenses within the correctional facilities. Public health expenses, this is where many of these memoranda of understanding and programmatic issues come into play. So you have the IEDC, and that's a substantial amount of money. That's basically most of the expenditures you see there. The $66.7 million is primarily PPE that IEDC was the acquirer of that. The other grants or commitments that have come in is additional purchase orders, and there's a footnote at the bottom that the commitments can include purchase orders, and so the actual cost may be different once we execute against all of these purchases. But IEDC would be additional purchase orders for PPE. You have the programs that I mentioned through Family and Social Services Administration, the Department of Health. Again, that memorandum of understanding to help with testing and contact tracing.
Are you, Senator Time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is a really big number, $300 million.
Right.
And do you have any more specifics about where this money is going?
Okay.
And for example, I know that there are a lot of provider groups out there that are asking for more money.
Mhm.
For example, I know that INARF and ARC are needing some more money for residential services. Where is this money? I mean, it's a lot of money to just put in 4 lines and say there it
Right.
is. So can you be a little more specific?
Sure. The public health expenses, so the IEDC component, that is a range of providers for PPE, so I don't know them all, but it's, between the two of them, you have the 66 million as actual expenses. They've got purchase orders of approximately another $100 million for PPE. That's IEDC.
Okay.
The Family and Social Services Administration, that was, I think the memorandum of understanding is for $35 million. There have been 3 rounds of awards for the, out of DDARS, the Developmental and Rehabilitative Services Bureau, I think involving 67 entities. I can't name them all, but that was about, so out of that 35 million, they've awarded to their subrecipients, so that hasn't been spent yet, but they've awarded to their subrecipients about $5 million. Then under the Mental Health and Addictions Bureau, are working with, or have awarded, or in the process of awarding to 24 entities, which are community mental health centers, just under $8 million. The Department of Aging is part of this process as well, but they're just getting their program stood up. The Department of Health Memorandum of Understanding is also a large one. It's $100 million. And that is really to jumpstart the supply chain, if you will, for testing. One of the things you may have heard about is that there's constraints on getting supplies. Reagent is a big choke point right now of, you can go out and take the test, but unless you have the reagents working with the right equipment to actually get the test completed, and everyone is, all states and entities are dueling for reagent. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is, could we get the attention of the marketplace by buying in bulk and making a big purchase on it? And so far, we haven't achieved a lot of success on that, but that's really what the $100 million is for, is to jumpstart the supply chain for the testing. And I think that those collectively should get close to $300 million for the public health expenses. In the economic support area, we have the Small Business Restart Program. That memorandum of understanding, I believe, was $30 or $35 million. The workforce development programs, that's split between a couple of primarily existing programs, the worker retraining grant program and the employer training program. Those collectively are approximately $50 million. Those are really just getting stood up right now, but I do have some statistics from them. In the employer training program, they have 242 employers signed up, 3,100 individuals have been enrolled. And the workforce ready grants is about 500. They're trying to take the data and link the data from the UI system, who's applying for UI, and sending them notices of, is it time to look for other skill sets, and trying to link through that to connect with those individuals. And then the Housing and Community Development Authority is the rent assistance program. Much like the City of Indianapolis, the program is quite in demand. There's been 18 to 20,000 applications submitted, and that staff and team are working through those programs, or working through those applications now. We'll see what might happen with the federal legislation as far as UI and the additional assistance programs being reduced. Does that change the demand in that, for that program?
Senator Talley.
Yeah, with regard to the rental assistance program, how much money has been put in there?
25 million is again, that's the amount of its memorandum of understanding, but nothing has, they're finishing the processing of the applications.
All right, I'm going to try to do this in my head. 20,000 applications and 25 million is about $1,000
Right, so
each. Is there any, and I'm asking, is there any more money available to put into that program? And the reason I'm asking is because right now we don't have an extension on the extra unemployment. People are going to be going from $600 a week to zero.
right.
And you know, I think everybody would rather see rental assistance than eviction for, you know, moratoriums. I mean, we need that. We need the rental assistance. Is there any way to get more money into that program? So right now, is there a cap, a total cap, $2,000 a family or something?
Yes, that's what, that per application,
Yeah.
2,000.
So that's my question. Is there any way to get more money into that program?
It's one of the things that, as we get the data from the Housing and Community Development Authority, that's being evaluated, along with some program adjustments and support on the eviction area. So it's being looked at both from a funding augmentation consideration as well as programmatic assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Taylor has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of along those lines, Marion County has their own rental assistance program. We have almost, I think it was 20 million. Are you, kind of along the same lines as Senator Talley, 25 million seems like a lot of money when it just is. Has the committee considered amplifying that a little bit?
Well, as I responded to Senator
Yeah.
Talley, we're looking at the demand and the applications in considering that. Marion County, I think, was a $15 million program.
Yeah,
Yep.
but there was an addition, there was okay, well, yeah, there was already a program in place, so it's an addition to that. The other thing is, what is the actual medical expenses at DLC, this DLC program that you brought up in the presentation?
I think
Is that testing of the inmates?
It could be, but it could also be that they've had some COVID cases, and so
Right.
they've had to treat the offenders.
Okay. I guess my question, all right. Now, that seems to me to be, do we get any say in us as state reps and state senators, we get no say in how they use that money at the Department of Corrections, right? Because it comes through this CARES Act funding? So
Well-
we couldn't suggest, for example, separating COVID patients from the non-COVID patients?
Well, I think that's, from a practical perspective, one of the things that DOC in just their offender management policies have had to consider. I can't say
But they haven't.
I can't say that they've done that, but I think, you know, there had to be a quarantine if they, once you had an offender that has tested, you
We
need to do
hope.
something.
We hope.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that question, because doesn't it seem kind of counterproductive to spend all this money with a organization that doesn't have the authority to command a better use of funds. So for example, we could say to the Department of Corrections through our administrative procedures that you should do certain things. This unelected group that is providing these funds, that's all they do is provide the funds and then, you know, move on. I guess I'm trying to figure out, do we have any input?
This is where I would distinguish between direct expenses versus programs.
Okay.
This group really thinks about and engages in, are there broader needs like workforce, the rental assistance program, and how do you structure programs? This is a direct expense that, for just like other health reasons at the DOC, if you don't manage it, you're going to get sued. And so this was one that was pretty obvious and a pretty easy decision to make internally within my office and the governor's office, that we're going to use this money to pay for COVID-related expenses to the offender, for the offender.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'm just saying that's part of the process of public policy making. Last but not least, your payroll for health and safety employees.
Yep.
Was that paid directly to the employees, or was it through their employer?
This would be a reimbursement. It has not occurred yet. This is our estimate of those expenses through June 30th.
Right.
But this would be nothing to the employee. This would be a reimbursement to the general fund or the particular dedicated funds of which their salaries are already funded.
These are state employees. These are not.
Yes.
These are not.
This is state employees.
Oh, this is not to hospitals who have.
No.
You know.
Right.
Frontline
State
essential
employees.
workers.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the last item is just a catch-all of miscellaneous. That's why they call it all items not listed above. So it's a small dollar amount right now, but you'll see some of the additional expenses. BMV had some partitions, you know, things to open up regional offices so that people could come into regional offices and conduct their business. So I'll leave with just where we are today and where we think things are heading. So I mentioned the last slide was our report to the Office of Inspector General. Last Friday, we got new guidance on what the reporting to the Inspector General needs to be. And so you'll see here that in this memorandum, they outline the future reporting. They will be the portal through which the information is provided. It's going to be posted on a separate website that's called the PRAC, or Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. It'll be a quarterly reporting. And one of the things that we've done with these memorandum of understanding, and I'd like to think that we were, you know, really smart in all of that, but setting up these projects or setting up these MOUs is going to help us do the reporting, I think, because they want you to establish projects for how you're using this money. Then within the projects, they're giving us 18, not just the 5 from the previous page, 18 expenditure categories. Then within the expenditures, contracts, grants, loans, transfer payments, and direct payments have to get reported over a certain threshold. I think it's $50,000, all get itemized. You aggregate any expenditures below $50,000. They want you to refile the report that we just did in September, and then regular quarterly reports will start in October. For the quarter ending September, we'll file in October. Finally, I'll leave with this. There's a lot of talk about additional federal legislation. You guys probably know just as well as I do where this is going to end up. But you have the House of Representatives has a bill, the Senate has a bill. One of the things that is consistent between the two is revenue replacement. They both allow for revenue replacement. How that's calculated, we'll see what the formula says. That could change the dynamic. We've talked about estimates and budgets. Well, if they come out with a revenue replacement opportunity, that may change how we view the whole allocation of this fund. Another topic that's been discussed is the extension of the date for the costs incurred. previous slide, I said December 30th of this year. I've heard talk of going out to 90 days beyond the state's fiscal year end. So that would be September 30th of 2021. What I heard in conjunction with that was the cost would need to be incurred through June 30th, but you need to liquidate everything or sort of have that all settled up by 90 days after, or September 30th. And then there's also some talk about mandating transfers to smaller governments using part of this coronavirus relief fund. I think we got out pretty early with our program in early May. I think what I've seen from the National League of Cities that maybe as many as half of the states did not share their money with local units of government. And so there's discussion now, and I think there will be deliberation of, does a certain percentage of this money, or do it have to go to the locals? And then the question would be there is, can then local governments use it under the existing guidelines, or do they have the opportunity to use it for revenue replacement on their own, however that's defined? So again, I've talked to the AIM and AIC folks. We're going to work together and see. There were some changes that we were going to make to the local program. We collectively agreed that the best thing to do is just wait a couple more weeks and see if the federal legislation comes out and just do the package all at once with any potential changes to that program.
Senator Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Johnson. I have a few questions. With respect to the public health expenses on this last page of about 300+ million, you said a lot of that went to testing and contact tracing, even though in the direct payment to the Department of Health earlier, it was almost a similar amount.
Yeah.
Where are we with that tracing contract, where originally the Department of Health was to have the contractor hire up to 500 employees, I believe?
I don't know how many employees they've hired. Did several hundred, whether they've hit that target or not, I don't know. I can find out what the higher rate has been. But the firm is in place. The contact tracing protocol is in place. I don't know the exact staffing level, though, if they're where they want to be.
Well, I would make a suggestion. I know my county health department is doing their own tracing as well, and if they've sort of hit a plateau in the number of employees or the number of tracers, I guess, that they've hired, they're not employees, the number of tracers they've hired, then maybe with the additional monies, they could push that back down to the local county health departments who are also doing that. My next
But
question.
Senator, the
Yes.
one thing on that, I do know, part of because we started off with just having the testing at state armories, and so we're trying to expand the actual testing network out to the counties, and so there is that engagement on the testing side, but I'll follow up on the contact tracing.
All right, thank you. The second one, with respect to the economic support under the DWD and employment training, I'm a little bit concerned, and I may be wrong, but it seems like some of these workforce programs and employment trainings have sort of overlooked those with disabilities. Several of those, I don't know if they're called workshops anymore, and I apologize, but they're out of business, but they don't necessarily fit into being able to transfer to another industry or to skill up somewhere else. And I think they've been left high and dry.
Okay.
My next question has to do with the evictions. So, moratorium that we have. My understanding currently, or is the eviction moratorium only on those who are currently unemployed and receiving unemployment? Or is it anybody who is able to defer?
I think it could be anybody.
So that's a concern I have, because if there's no check there, then if someone has been holding their rent in abeyance, even if they've been working, and as long as this eviction moratorium goes on, then at the end of the day, the landlord could have had a very financially healthy tenant in there, and then have a long, ugly fight trying to recoup those dollars and/or move them on. The other part of it is, my concern is, since up to this date, those who are unemployed have not only received their unemployment, but in addition, this extra $600, which some of us have heard anecdotally from businesses, has made it difficult for them to hire their staff back, is that as the moratorium continues, there has been no push, if you will, that the person who is not up to date on their rent payments is even having a conversation with their landlords. I mean, whether or not they're capable of paying or not, it would seem like there should be something there to say you have to try, at least acknowledge that you are unable and you're working this out. Because this is also, my concern is for the landlords who have had no income and are continuing to pay taxes and utilities, et cetera.
Okay.
And then my last question, and this is probably very small, but in your last sort of catch-all, you note that some of the monies went, of the less than 6 million, well, actually less than 4 million spent, to the Management Performance Hub. What was spent there and why?
That was their redirected staff time and for, I think, data science, data analytics services that they acquired to help the Department of Health and FSSA with the things that you see on their website, collecting the data and analyzing and running algorithms to predict hotspots and all that data science related.
I appreciate if they had to acquire some data analytic programs or someone had to create some algorithms, but I personally thought that's what the Management Performance Hub was supposed to do anyway, so I'd kind of like a breakdown of that, please.
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions.
Senator Talion.
Yeah, I just have a couple of wrap-up things on this. I just, and this is a couple of comments. You know, in this 300 and some million in the public health expenses, my quick notes are that we've got like $160 million spent on PPE and purchase orders, and another $100 million for testing, and we only have $35 million or $50 million awarded to actual provision of services. I mean, we've got all kinds of people that need services at home now because you know, we can't get services to cover residential. We can't get money to cover residential services. We can't get people to work because what we pay them is so low. Why are we not spending more money on actual services?
Well, the primary use of the money is to fight the virus. And so part of that is the testing, and testing is expensive. And so
$100 million worth just
Pardon?
seems, $100 million worth just seems like amazing to me.
Well, not only the services, but as I mentioned, the reagent, the supplies, having to equip people so that the testing location is safe. It's an expensive operation. You know, as far as the services, we did work with FSSA on the sustainability grants with some of the DDARs and aging service providers, and to get assistance out to them. But we can revisit with FSSA on those needs, what they're hearing from their providers.
Okay, and then just one more thing. So we still have a lot of people out. I just heard the number Friday and I can't remember, but we're still paying hundreds of thousands of claims on unemployment every week. We've got another, maybe 6 weeks left in our UI fund. And we've got the and it's not very much money, what people get as wage replacement. I mean, it is maybe 40-some% of wages replaced for regular W-2 workers under UI. So the $600 a week that they were getting may have gotten some of those people up to replaced wages, but now they're going to be gone. That $600 stopped. And I think it's going to be really, it won't be very long before we're going to have a lot of people that basically need poor relief of one form or another. And so I'm thinking that, you've just committed $1 billion here out of this money, but I'm making the suggestion or the question about whether we need to think about, if the feds don't do this, if the feds don't reauthorize some extra amount of wage replacement, whether we are going to have to use some of this money for poor relief one way or another, either through counties or through an additional state-based unemployment benefit, and it might not get to $600 a week, but we might, right now the cap is, I should know this, I think it's $390. It might be $70, but I think it's $390. That's as much as you can get on unemployment without that $600. And that's just not enough money to pay your rent, pay your utilities, and buy food, basic things that people need. So has there been any discussion about what's going to happen on the poor relief issue once that $600, now that $600 is not authorized again?
We have engaged with the township trustees to ask about the poor relief. That's an interesting component, because out of all of these, we have 3 levels of government that are dealing with this. And so the $600, if it does, it's suspended now, or it's in limbo. So those UI people go back to the normal system, not the enhanced system, but they go back to the normal system. And to the extent that there are utilities and rent and other things, you've got the township trustees, township assistance programs. And as far as, what the state can do, I think the rent program, we see the demand there. And so I think the avenue, such as working through the state agencies that work with the providers that provide the services, is the right position for the state to be in. And the townships are local to their citizens, and the federal government is, they make direct payments to individuals, in many ways. So I think it's trying to figure out what is the right combination of that assistance, and finding that, what's that right balance.
Well, I'm just pointing out that I think that, I know that some people think that the $600 was a great benefit to a lot of people, but when you work out the numbers, it didn't do much more than replace wages for a whole lot of people. And now that that's gone, especially the people that are making less than, eligible for less than the max amount on UI, eligible for less than $390, is going to increase dramatically. And so those people, the rental assistance program is emblematic. You've got $25 million with 20,000 applications. That's $1,000 a family, and you budgeted 2. So you're basically double subscribed onto what people might you know, even $50,000 would have given, or 50 million would have given 20,000 applicants $2,000, and $2,000 over, what, 4, 5, 6 months is not a lot of rent assistance. So I'm worried that we're going to be looking at a huge decline in personal income for a lot of people because we don't have the jobs back. The restaurants are not back open, and the hotels are not back open. We're going to have a lot of people in poverty. So.
Representative Porter, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, just a three questions. The MOU that you referred to with the agencies, are they available on the website?
We're going to post them. They're not on there yet.
Okay, but you are going to post them? Do you have a time frame for that, sincerely?
It should be within the week, I would think.
Within the week, okay. Also, all the regulations, the new federal reporting guidelines, will they also be on the website?
We can. They're on a lot of different websites, but we can send you the PDF document.
Yes, sir. And last but not least, you and I have talked about this before in regards to local government, cities and towns, and AIM having a ombudsman or a navigator, someone to help these smaller towns understand the bureaucracy of the paperwork or those new federal guidelines that are coming through. And I know I've talked to the governor's office in regards to that. And just want to continue to put that on your radar screen. Okay. Is that, you know, if you have $500 million for cities and towns, regards to PPEs, et cetera, or whatever, payroll taxes or payroll, whatever, that we should be trying to utilize all those dollars because they were not, I think you had maybe a month ago, maybe $93 million maybe, or less, out of $500 million that was being spent. Something like that, 93,000.
Well, no, we stay in frequent contact with AIM and AIC in how we can streamline the process. So.
Okay, because a navigator or an ombudsman of that type nature would be good for those individuals.
Okay.
For those
Well,
companies.
the IFA has a staff dedicated, and they take the phone calls and emails, and they are pretty responsive to help people.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time and effort and information that you've updated us with. And as we know, there are several moving parts with the federal government out there still debating this further. So with that, we are adjourned.